Do you really want this old house? It's a shame that after all the hard work and caregiving you have done, all you get is this old house. Despite inheriting a valuable house where I've lived for many years from my grandmother, my brother's wife laughed at it. It might be old, but it's a house filled with precious memories. However, she didn't seem to understand that. With such an attitude, she might someday lose or damage something important. I'm Claire. I'm 28 years old and unmarried. Currently, I'm taking care of my grandmother, who is ill, while living in her house with my mother. I have a married brother, but since he found it difficult to support our grandmother, I took on the role. Although my mother is also around, she's old and finds caregiving difficult. So I'm the primary caregiver for my grandmother. When we were little, our mother got divorced and worked hard to raise us. As a result, my brother and I were mainly raised by our grandmother. I can't abandon her after all she has done for us. Moreover, I am single and have a flexible schedule due to my ability to work from home. My brother's wife doesn't seem very interested in taking care of our family. So I was the most appropriate person to take on this role. Caregiving is challenging. I continue to do it daily as a way of showing gratitude to my beloved grandmother. My days with my grandmother are full of enjoyment, and I don't feel any hardship. However, recently, I've been feeling stressed about something else. It's about the attitude of my brother's wife. My brother does recognize the support he received from our grandmother, and although he can't be involved in her actual care, he often visits us to check on things. But his wife's behavior and words during these visits irritate me. Are you cleaning properly? Look, this room. You haven't cleaned it, have you? Since you're relying on grandma, make sure you do your part. My brother's wife, to put it positively, is the type to speak her mind out. But from my perspective, she's unpleasant and rude. She visits our house, criticizes me with such an attitude, and often makes sarcastic remarks. I've let a lot of things slide, but the phrase freeloader is hard to accept. Indeed, I am staying at my grandmother's house, but I earn my own living expenses. I receive no financial support from my brother. Yet, his wife accuses me of having an easy life at my grandmother's house. It's incomprehensible to be criticized by her, who doesn't understand the difficulty of working while managing the house and caregiving. I am legitimately working and supporting myself with my income. I haven't touched any of my grandmother's assets. Even when I explained these points to my brother's wife, she ignored my words and provoked me by saying, "Even so, the reason you're caregiving is that you don't have to pay rent, right? Instead of relying on your parents, you're relying on your grandmother, aren't you?" Stress was piling up from dealing with my brother's wife. However, I also feel tired every day, and I don't have the energy to deal with her. Knowing that whatever I say would be met with negative responses, I gradually began to ignore her sarcasm. Then she would say, "Oh, you're not talking back? Does your silence mean you agree?" Whether I respond to her or not, my brother's wife, who frequently picks on me, leaves me in disbelief. To be honest, I want to ask my brother not to bring her along, but she's cunning and behaves as such. She never says anything bad to me in front of my brother. The unpleasant words are always thrown at me when it's just her and me. Therefore, my brother, unaware of her true nature, always brings her to our grandmother's house. I did try to have a light conversation about it, but it ended with, "She wouldn't say such awful things. Right? Are you bullying my wife? Nobody likes an annoying sister-in-law. She's making a special effort to get along with you. Try to be friendly." He always took his wife's side. Talking to him only made things worse. Realizing that I couldn't rely on my brother, I decided it was best to have as little to do with his wife as possible. While harboring such feelings, one day, my grandmother's condition suddenly worsened, and she needed to be hospitalized. My brother was busy with work and couldn't find time to visit the hospital. As a result, my mother and I ended up taking care of my grandmother. My mother's health wasn't good either due to past overwork, so it was difficult for her to go to the hospital every day. Therefore, I was the one who went to the hospital daily, checking on and caring for my grandmother. After a month of such a life, my grandmother quietly passed away. It was sudden, but I was somewhat prepared, knowing her condition was serious. However, it was difficult for me to accept her death, having spent my childhood with her and being with her until her last moment. While devastated by this harsh reality, I informed my mother and brother of our grandmother's death. Then, unexpectedly, my brother's wife came to see me. My brother was delayed due to work reasons, so his wife came to me first. Could it be that she was concerned about me in such a situation? I couldn't believe it given her past attitude, but I thought for a moment that she might have some humanity. While feeling grateful for her visit, I expressed my thanks, but her response was unexpected. If you have time to grieve, hurry up and finish the funeral and inheritance procedures. Unlike you, your brother's busy with work. Don't give us any extra trouble. Instead of a warm-hearted sentiment or comfort, she seemed to have come to urge the progression of the inheritance and funeral arrangements. Of course, this is the kind of person she is. I was surprised to find out again that my brother's wife was such a heartless and self-centered person. Despite my grief, she started to rush the funeral arrangements. I certainly appreciated the fact that she came to help in place of my brother, but I wasn't in a position to be ordered around by her, especially when she has been keeping her distance from our family until now. Though I felt dissatisfactions in my heart, I continued to endure, not wanting to cause a conflict right after my grandmother's death. When my brother finally appeared, his wife quieted down for a while. However, as soon as she was out of his sight, her usual sarcasms toward me didn't stop. Amidst my desire to properly process my grandmother's passing, her behavior infuriated me. Additionally, she had a talent for making insensitive remarks. Your grandmother lived too long. Did she end up using all her assets? After all that, how much inheritance will we get? Even before the funeral was over, she was already worried about money. My patience couldn't withstand this. Is that what you would be thinking right after someone's death? Please stop it. I finally raised my voice, and she seemed a bit surprised too. Nevertheless, there's a difference between things that should be said and things that shouldn't. Normally, she would have retorted, but this time, she didn't respond and just left the scene. Later, perhaps realizing she had gone too far, she avoided interacting with me, and the funeral was completed peacefully. At that point, my mental state also began to stabilize. I hadn't completely overcome the shock, but I vowed in my heart that it was pointless to dwell on the past. I returned to the house where I had lived with my grandmother and began to sort through her belongings alone. While organizing what inheritance should be claimed and what needed to be dealt with, my brother and his wife visited. I'll help to sort out her belongings, my brother offered. There were many items, so I was grateful for the help. However, his wife, yet again, focused only on discussing assets and money. While sorting through our grandmother's belongings, it might be understandable to discuss inheritance. I didn't argue with her at that time, but even my brother seemed slightly puzzled by her attitude. As we continued to sort out her things and progressed with the inheritance procedures, it became clear that what our grandmother left behind was her house and some money. At that moment, my brother's wife quickly said, "We'll take the money. This house isn't suitable as a place for us to live, so you should inherit the house and take care of it." Perhaps the house, clearly showing its age, didn't appear valuable in her eyes. I sensed from her attitude that choosing money was more beneficial to her. My brother seemed slightly perplexed by her argument but ultimately chose money over the house. Understanding their intentions, I calmly decided to inherit the house. As the conversation wound down, my brother and his wife began preparing to leave. "Thanks for helping out," I said as I saw them off at the entrance. Just as they were leaving, my brother's wife whispered in my ear, "What a pity that only this old house was left. Haha. Smart, so I got that cash. Was taking care of your grandmother even worth it?" She left with these sarcastic words. She looked down on me until the very end. I vowed in my heart that day I could not forgive her. No matter what happens, I will never forgive her. In the following months, I continued to live with my mother in the same house. It felt quiet without my grandmother. On a particular day, my mother was away on a trip with her friends, which added to the stillness within the house. As dinner time approached and I was about to head to the kitchen, the doorbell rang. Who all'd it be? With that question in mind, I headed to the entrance, where I found my brother's wife standing alone. My brother was not there. She had come alone. "Good evening. Is something wrong?" I asked in surprise, opening the door to find her already stepping inside. "Hey, why did you keep it a secret? This house is amazing," she exclaimed loudly, inspecting every corner of the room. "You're really calculating, aren't you? You knew this would happen. That's why you chose to inherit the house." Her words were always laced with criticism towards me. Perhaps she was surprised by the transformation of my grandmother's house. From that surprise, she directed her grievances at me. In truth, after my grandmother passed away, I earnestly renovated the house. Recently, more and more people have been customizing and renovating homes themselves. I was also interested in this trend and, though a beginner, decided to give it a try. Fortunately, a friend who worked in construction lived nearby. With his support, I was able to finish the house to my liking. This house was something my grandmother was proud of. When she was alive, she used to say with a smile, "Grandpa was particular, so the carpenter chose and used good quality wood for this house." My grandfather had a particular preference for wood, and his acquaintances at the construction company were highly praised for their skills. I respected my grandparents' wishes and went on to renovate the house. The renovated house looked like luxurious accommodation. While incorporating modern design, it maintained the presence of my grandparents. This house, which my grandmother cherished, also became a valuable place for me. Hearing about it, my brother's wife suddenly came to visit. After looking around the house, she made an unexpected remark. "You have a great taste to renovate the house like this. We'll take this house as our inheritance." Wasn't the inheritance issue already settled? Now, she's suddenly demanding to inherit the house? I struggled to understand what she was saying. Surprised, I couldn't respond to her. She then said assertively, "Listen, we've decided. We'll exchange our current house for this house. This house will be my husband's inheritance. You agree, right?" She was pressuring me as usual. "There shouldn't be any objections because it's an exchange," she insisted. "We'll start moving immediately. Sort out your belongings and leave soon." My brother's wife repeatedly said to leave as if she had gone mad. I reiterated the facts about the inheritance, but she seemed to intentionally ignore them. Her determination was clear. She wouldn't budge no matter how much I tried to persuade her. She believed that not yielding would make her point. It was obvious that arguing with her was pointless. Deciding that further dialogue was impossible, I chose to temporarily retreat. "Understood. Then, I'll leave this house." After conveying this to her, I started organizing my things. "You finally understand. Please hurry." Relieved that I was complying with her, she smiled at me. Ignoring her smug expression, I pretended to collect my belongings and walked to the garden shed. From there, I took the tools used during the renovation and headed back inside where my brother's wife was waiting. Seeing me holding the tools, she was momentarily surprised, but soon urged me to hurry. "You can move those tools later. Just clear the room for now." Responding to her, I said, "I understand. I simply needed these to collect my personal belongings," and slammed the tools into the large living room wall. My sister-in-law looked shocked, unable to grasp what was happening. Ignoring her astonishment, I began removing the wall materials. At that moment, my brother's wife screamed in shock. Seeing me destroying the house, she attacked me in fear, raising her voice. "Wait, you! What are you planning? What are you trying to do?" She raised her voice, desperate to stop what I was doing. While holding her back with the tool, I explained, "All the materials for the house renovation were paid for by me. They are my belongings, so I will collect them all. That's not what I meant. Stop the destruction." She continued to raise her voice but didn't come closer to me. Ignoring her cries, I continued to strip off the wall components. As I was about to start working on the floor with my tools raised, my brother appeared. I had called him immediately when I had left my sister-in-law alone to fetch the tools. "What's going on?" I could hear loud voices from all the way outside. Entering the room, my brother was astonished to see the state of the living room. What happened to both of you?" He must have been greatly surprised to see the damaged room, me holding a tool, and his wife crying next to him. She then told him what had happened rapidly. "This person is dangerous." It was natural for him to feel suspicious of me under these circumstances. However, my sister-in-law was the reason I behaved like this. I calmly told my brother about how she suddenly came today and told me to leave the house. But I didn't expect the house to be renovated, so I can't accept the fact that it was inherited in a secretive way. That's unfair. Therefore, she should leave and we should live here. Hearing my words, she started to make incomprehensible comments in front of my brother. Listening to her contradictory comments, my brother fully supported me. We agreed that my sister would inherit the house, and we would receive money as an inheritance, right? Isn't the handling of this house my sister's right? My brother cornered his wife. As a result, she felt isolated and became emotional. And then she took an extreme stance. "Why aren't you taking my side? If you won't do that, then I will end our marriage." Indeed, there's no point in continuing a marriage with someone who doesn't accept their mistakes and refuses to apologize. My sister-in-law, trying to forcibly pull my brother to her side with the choice of divorce, was met with his agreement, and she was at a loss for words. From then on, my brother took control. What if my sister claims that the following is unfair? What if we used the inherited money for investments and the money we obtained increased? How would you respond if she accused us of being unfair? My brother posed such a question to his wife. There's no way I'd concede. We're the ones who invested it, and we haven't violated anything. My brother's wife emotionally responded to my brother's hypothetical scenario. Receiving her reaction, my brother spoke softly as if to guide her. "Do you really think so? But what you're arguing is the same thing. This residence is old, and my sister used her own funds to renovate it and increase its value. After inheriting it, she just changed it according to her own wishes. There's no issue." My brother said so and apologized to me. Sitting next to him, he appealed to his wife to apologize to me. Perhaps realizing her mistake through my brother's metaphor, she also apologized with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry for causing such a commotion. Of course, there are many things I want to point out, but for now, I'll take care of her. I sincerely apologize." After that, my brother left the house quietly with his calmed-down wife. Though it was somewhat forceful, I was able to protect the house I had shared with my grandmother, and as I saw my brother and his wife, I spoke to my grandmother in heaven. I got a bit too excited and damaged your beloved house, Grandma. I'll touch it up until it's beautiful again. So please forgive me, Grandma. I'll take good care of this house from now on. Thank you, my dear. It felt as if I received a reply from my grandmother. My grandmother's photo that was displayed in the house seemed to be smiling faintly. Eventually, my brother chose the path of divorce. It became clear that what I said about her past attitudes and words toward me were true, and it seemed he also judged it would be difficult to keep living together. She probably wouldn't change. My brother hinted with a smile that perhaps our grandmother had given him some advice. As for me, I rebuilt the damaged house with my own hands. The repair costs were claimed by my brother to take responsibility for his ex-wife's mistakes. Seeing the state of the house, a friend who works at a construction company teased, that was a bold move. In truth, the color of the living room walls was something I intended to renovate someday. I wasn't completely satisfied with it. Despite some difficulties, I am now content with the results. From now on, I hope to reflect on the past memories in this house and build new memories and experiences. My son, who earns a high income, and you, who spend every day without working, are not compatible. My son and I are planning to live here from now on, so please leave immediately. It happened on a day when my husband, who usually stays in his room, had gone out for a bit. Suddenly, the intercom at my house buzzed incessantly, and when I opened the door, my mother-in-law was standing there, looking excited. Taken aback by this sudden visit, I asked, "Hello, mother-in-law. What brings you here at this time?" Before anything, answer the intercom immediately when it rings. Making me wait is quite rude, don't you think? I'm sorry, I was a bit tied up with work. It's hard to believe you do any real work at home. I bet you're just lazing around, aren't you? That's not true. I'm genuinely working. I don't want to hear excuses. You live a comfortable life here every day, yet benefit from my son's high salary. I think it's unfair. We intend to start a new life here, just my son and I. Could you find somewhere else to go? She pulled out a piece of paper from an envelope she was holding and handed it to me with a smug smile. Here, take a look. The paper read divorce papers. Moreover, my husband's section was already filled out. Wait, are these divorce papers? Yes. He's also come to realize he can't be with you any longer. So, sign this and leave this place immediately. She looked incredibly proud of herself, perhaps relishing the shock she imagined I'd be in. But I wasn't as flustered as she thought. With a slight smile, I promptly signed the divorce papers. Inwardly, I couldn't help but chuckle at how much she misunderstood. She didn't know anything. My name is Nancy. I work from home, hustling as a freelance writer and editor. I used to work for a publishing company, so I've leveraged that experience to maintain a stable income even now. While working at the publishing company, it wasn't uncommon to work late into the night or even on weekends. But the compensation was good, and thanks to my salary, bonuses, and copyright-related rewards from the publishing world, I managed to save a considerable amount. Thanks to that, despite the instability of freelancing, I've been able to live comfortably. I met my husband, Dylan, while working together at the publishing company. He was an aspiring writer, chasing his dreams, and I supported and resonated with his passion. Gradually, my feelings of appreciation turned into love, leading to our marriage. Initially, our married life was fulfilling as we supported each other's careers. Upon getting married, I started freelancing, switching to working from home. Until then, I believed both my husband and in-laws understood and appreciated my career and income. However, as time passed, it seemed their misunderstandings about my work grew. My in-laws held traditional values. In their generation, the concept of working from home wasn't common. They also perceived freelancing as unstable, especially compared to my husband's regular employment, and thus devalued my work. Additionally, Dylan began telling his parents how successful he had become as a renowned writer. Because of this, the cold attitude of my in-laws towards me intensified. Every time we met, they'd sarcastically say things like, "Oh, look, it's Nancy who doesn't seem to work much. What brings you here today? Looking for a job recommendation? Mother-in-law, if you're concerned about our living expenses, I apologize, but I'm earning well, so there's no need to worry." Well, you sound quite confident. Maybe you should show more gratitude to Dylan. Without him, you'd be in trouble, wouldn't you? My mother-in-law had old-fashioned values. In her generation, women typically managed the household while men worked outside. Thus, seeing me work from home, she likely assumed I was shirking housework. The story paints a picture of generational and cultural differences, misunderstandings, and challenges within a family. Mother-in-law, freelancing means that you can earn a good income even without going to an office and working from home. Nowadays, with technological advancements, we can work from anywhere, and my job falls into that category. However, my mother-in-law responded angrily, "All you do is talk back. You're such an unpleasant daughter-in-law. It just doesn't look natural for a young woman to be messing around with a computer at home all day." Lately, these kinds of conversations had been recurring, and I was honestly getting a bit tired of it. I swallowed down my retort, thinking, not this topic again. Inwardly, I thought, in reality, I'm the main breadwinner, and I handle most of the housework, but I didn't say it out loud. In the beginning, her occasional complaints only occurred when Dylan wasn't around, but recently, she's been saying them more openly, especially during family dinners at her house, which felt more like a session to criticize me than anything else. Despite being invited, only Dylan's portion of food would be on the table. There was no seat for me, making it very uncomfortable. Moreover, she seemed to badmouth me to other relatives, and I could hear whispered comments, which were very unpleasant. I was often taken aback by her and my father-in-law's attitudes, but Dylan's silence also irritated me. On top of that, they saw Dylan as a successful author and relied on him for money, often asking him to buy things. This was funded by the money I earned. Initially, it was a small amount, but lately, I noticed we were spending almost $2,000 monthly for his parents. I decided to tell Dylan, "I want you to stop giving my earnings to your parents without asking me." But his response was colder than I expected. "You're earning money while relaxing at home, right? It's easy money, so why not let my parents use a bit of it?" Wait, Dylan, do you really think I'm just lounging around at home to earn my money? I couldn't hide my shock at his words. It felt like the last straw. I felt betrayed, confused, and sad. Even though there were challenges with his parents and our differing backgrounds, I believed Dylan was on my side, which helped me persevere. That reassurance was shattered by his words. Dylan, who I thought understood my feelings and efforts, ended up joining those who mocked me behind my back. I remembered our first date when he passionately talked about his work, shared dreams, and values. I was drawn to his enthusiasm and sincerity. But lately, he seemed to have forgotten his dreams and passion and spent his days aimlessly, often engrossed in games. And that figure was completely different from the person he was when we first met. Games aren't bad in themselves, but his obsession made him neglect his passion for writing, which saddened and angered me. I started questioning if I should continue my future with Dylan. If my relationship with Dylan continued, what would become of my life? Even when I tried to imagine a future with him, I could only see a bleak future. Thus, I decided to divorce him and secretly began looking for a new place to live. I searched online for apartments suitable for singles and visited a few properties for viewing. Focusing on apartments with a quiet living environment and strong security, I finally decided on one property. One day, while Dylan, who usually played games in his room, was out, my mother-in-law visited. Surprised by her sudden visit, I opened the door. Without waiting, she sat on the living room sofa and bluntly said, "Nancy, you should leave this place." "What are you saying all of a sudden?" I was too shocked to respond. "Isn't it obvious? You're bad at housework." And even after Dylan became a popular author, You haven't changed. Above all, you can't even work properly. But I've told you many times that it's a misunderstanding. Haven't I? However, my mother-in-law interrupted me, smiling gently. I plan to live here and support Dylan. Taking care of him is much better than looking after that noisy old lady. By noisy old lady, do you mean Dylan's grandmother? Yes, that woman who is technically my mother-in-law. Even though I've done so much for her, she always finds fault. She shows no gratitude, and I'm fed up. If I live here, I can take care of Dylan, and he can focus on his work without any hindrance. Isn't that wonderful? With that, she pulled out a piece of paper from the envelope she held. So, would you please leave this house immediately? As I listened to her words, I accepted the divorce papers she held out. They had been signed by Dylan. Did Dylan really sign this? A little while ago, I suggested to Dylan that it might be better for both of you to get a divorce. It seems he was fed up with you two because he signed it without hesitation, she said with a playful tone. Everything that followed happened so quickly. I took my pre-packed bags and promptly decided to move to a new apartment. During the move, I also managed to file the divorce papers, and a new life began. My new life was more smooth and comfortable than I had expected. My small apartment had only essential furniture and appliances, and its simplicity seemed to boost my focus. I was free from complications, and each day was calm and peaceful. I'd wake up to natural light streaming in through the window and the sound of birds chirping in the distance. I would get up whenever I wanted, eat breakfast, and plan my day. When I start working, I get so engrossed that time would fly by. It felt heavenly not having to worry about the gaze and expectations of Dylan and my parents-in-laws, and to be able to work at my own pace. One day, as I was engrossed in work at my desk, my smartphone vibrated. It was a call from Dylan. I hesitated but decided to answer. Nancy, please come back right now. A desperate Dylan pleaded. Why would you want me to come back all of a sudden? To be honest, my parents found out I lied about being a popular author. I'm under immense pressure now. They're even talking about moving in, expecting to live off my earnings. So, please, can you come back? I see, but returning isn't that simple. You chose to sign the divorce papers, didn't you? So did I. We're not on the same path anymore. So deal with your issues yourself. It's none of my business. His voice was a mix of desperation and sadness. But I believe we should be together. Please come back. Firmly, I responded, we've chosen different lives now. I could hear Dylan taking a deep breath on the other end. I understand, but since the divorce, there have been many troubles, and it's costing me a lot. I need assistance with expenses like the care fees for our parents and compensations for the chaos it caused. Why are you suddenly talking about this? I think your decisions played a part in ruining all of my plans. How dare you? Remember when we were married how you and your parents mocked me? I didn't want to say this, but now you seem like an enemy. Your financial troubles arise because you don't work properly. Find another way to sort it out. I wish you wouldn't rely on me for everything. With that, I ended the call. Despite numerous subsequent calls from Dylan, I blocked him and changed my number. A few months later, I happened to pass by where his house used to be. Instead of his house, there was now just an empty land. A nearby resident told me about the recent disputes at his place, with police getting involved at times. The neighbor's words seemed to contain all the emotions of the situation. As she said, you must have gone through a lot, too. There must have been a lot of turmoil leading to the loss of his house. I stood there for a while, reflecting on our past. The unexpected outcome might be some kind of karma. Dylan's little lie had had such a significant impact, more unbelievable than any story he might have written. From then on, I pledged to myself to live honestly, expressing my feelings and thoughts without lies or pretense. No matter how challenging things get, I recognize the importance of conveying the truth and cherishing genuine feelings.